So good afternoon. This is the sales confidence event for individual contributors, AE account managers, any quota carrying rep. Can you just let me know that you can hear me and see me in the comments? Can I just get a hey, hi, so I'm aware that you can hear and see me because we're about to kick off. So as I mentioned, my name's James Ski. I'm the CEO and founder of Sales Confidence. And our vision is to build a valuable B2B sales community. And thankfully, we are well supported by a number of key partners, a sales engagement platform, SalesLoft, the number one phone system, Aircall, G2 number one for reviews, Venetrix the number one for talent, supporting by training provider, and we've got their CEO and founder today from SalesWorks. We've then got a Cognizant for lead generation, SimilarWeb for data intelligence, Clary for core forecasting, Exactly for sales compensation, and also Air Marketing for outbound business development. So what we will be delivering for you is 5 speakers that have been nominated by their sales leader because they have delivered in their role to date. As we all know, this has been one of the maddest years ever to be a sales professional. And I'm proud that we've got these opportunities. While we may not be in person, we can still enjoy each other's company and learn from some people that are delivering. Okay, so order of speakers. We've got first up, we're going to have Misha, who's an account executive at SalesLoft. He will be followed by Victoria, a senior sales manager at SimilarWeb. Then we've got Leo Fang, who is the head of sales of Aircall. Then we've got Shabri, who is the founder and CEO at SalesWorks. And then we'll be wrapping up with Alex White, who's an enterprise AE from Go Cardless. Now, it's really important as I invite Misha up to get behind each of the speakers by applying a comment when you see them and encourage them. It's actually very bewildering talking at a screen when we can't see your eyes and we can't necessarily engage with you. But I'm really excited that our first speaker I'm going to introduce is Misha. And so let's get Misha on screen so we know we're live, and then I'll do an introduction. So we can see you, Misha. Hello.
Hi, James.
Are you ready?
I am. Let me just share my screen.
All right. While you're doing that, I'll give an introduction. So first up is Misha. He actually started his career as a management consultant before moving into sales. And he discovered his passion and career in sales, previously working for a very successful employee engagement platform called Peacom. Now, fortunately, Misha was one of the first AEs, and he's had an absolute blinder in the last 12 months working for SalesLoft. SalesLoft are the number one sales engagement partner. Misha, I'm going to hand over to you. Next 7 minutes. Good luck.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it. So I'm going to be talking today about how to deal with the highs and lows that inevitably come with working in sales, and really try how to get to a point where you don't burn out, but also you can maintain a more consistent level of performance. Now, as James said, I started my career in management consulting. It was mostly PowerPoints, Excel sheets, and incredibly late nights. And there were very few highs and lows. It was mostly a pretty dull experience, but luckily, I very quickly traded in my dull consulting job for a far more exciting career of B2B media sales. And I loved it. It made me feel alive and it was incredibly exciting, but it came with extreme highs and lows. And for the first time, I experienced the pitfalls that come with that. I remember vividly in my first month, the cold call that I made where I agreed a 5-figure deal and the extreme euphoria that came with that, followed by a complete pit of despair when they never signed the contract. And my first year of sales was pretty much like this, kind of yo-yoing between highs and lows and good results and bad results. And I started my first project by having a successful project, then complete car crash, followed by a record-breaking project. And although I was trending up and I became a top performer, I was incredibly inconsistent. And these extreme emotions are pretty much akin to that old adage of champagne and razor blades, so to speak. I quickly realized that these highs and lows were things that I needed to manage if I was going to have a long-term career in sales. Otherwise, I was going to very quickly burn out. My first year might have been my last year. Now, aside from the mental kind of anguish that these highs and lows can cause, it also can be complete poison for your sales cycles. And I don't know where this quote is from, but I think it's pretty true that when emotions run high, logic runs low. You can't make the right decisions in your sales cycles, as well as you can't keep your head. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I learned over the years that I've been in sales that have helped me better manage these and maintain a more consistent level of performance while also avoiding burnout. Now, the first thing is that if you're having some success in sales, but you're still experiencing these highs and lows, you're probably at a stage where you're unconsciously competent, which is a good place to start. But the problem is that you're unaware of the things that you do that lead to success, which can often leave you surprised about the outcome of events, good or bad. You think they're going to sign and they don't sign. You don't think they're going to sign and they do sign. And this is what creates these kind of extreme emotions and the stress. And what we want to try and move to is a point where you can almost predict the future to some degree, where you're consciously competent to the point where you know what drives your success, you know what actions make you successful and what's likely to happen. And this is an ongoing process. It's a very difficult thing to do, and I don't think anyone can fully master it. But the things that I've been focusing on have really helped me try and achieve as close to this as possible is examining and reflecting pretty much everything that results in a significantly positive or negative reaction within a sales cycle. Consistently look at your own game and the minutiae points and actions that you can change that will drive the right results and remove the things that aren't driving the right results. Secondly, don't just listen to your manager, but also ask for feedback from customers and prospects. Try and understand what their feedback is about you. I'd also watch back your calls and meetings if you can. Look for trends, look at the body language of your prospects when you're speaking, trying to understand what you shouldn't do and what you should do going forward. The second thing is pretty much a cliche, but I think it's very true, which is that you should focus on the process and not the outcome. And there's a bunch of things we can't control in sales, and there's a bunch of things that we can control that also matter. Now, the things we can't control, forget them, we can't do anything about it. The things that we can and matter, that's what's going to drive your outcomes. And really the actionable thing here is instead of thinking about your number, your target, whether the deal is going to close, think about on each individual deal, what is the next best action that you can take that will drive the deal forward. And all of these little actions will start to add up over time so that you can get more consistent results. And you don't worry about whether it's going to close or not, but you just worry, am I doing the right behavior? Am I taking the right action? Am I being the right salesperson? And then finally, try and separate your self-worth from your quota attainment. I know everyone kind of knows that saying, you're only as good as your last quarter. And I know a bunch of salespeople that internalize this. And I think the challenge with that is if you internalize that, you live in a constant state of anxiety. You're always trying to beat the last quarter no matter what, and never kind of being able to accept any losses. And these losing streaks and hot streaks are a real thing. Like if you close a big deal, then you close lots more deals, and then you have a bad deal that goes awry, and then suddenly you're on a losing streak and you keep losing. And really what we want to do is get to a state where it's more consistent. And I think the thing that we can do is remind ourselves of the wins when things get tough. I often, if I have a really bad deal that doesn't close, listen back to a call that was particularly good and kind of remind myself that I can do this. I would also try and focus yet again on your behaviors and your activities rather than the number. Define yourself, value yourself on what you do, not on your number, because over time in the long run, if you do the right things, if you take the right actions, it will result in quota attainment. Just because you have a bad quarter doesn't mean you're a bad salesperson. Now, we've all had these big losses, I'm sure. Deals that we've worked a year on or years on, and we think we've run a brilliant process, and suddenly it just blows up from something totally out of your control. And the reality is there's going to be many wins and losses along the way. Sales is an infinite game. It's not a finite game. You can't win or lose it in a year. And if you do have one of those big losses, those are the things that can set you off on tilt. And at that moment, that's when you have to remember that if you roll the dice enough times and you're taking the right behaviors, in the long run, you will win. And as long as you take that to heart, it will help you keep sane in those really despairing moments. Now, zooming out, this kind of mindset and kind of altering for this can have a huge impact on your earnings over a 7-year period, for example. Instead of having kind of big highs and lows in earnings and kind of having stellar years and then burnout years, what we really want to try and do is go from those extremes to smaller swings of more consistent performance. And these principles should get you there. Now, just to summarize, there's really 3 things that I would focus on. Firstly, focus on becoming consciously competent. So examine your actions consistently. What produces positive or negative results? ask for feedback from prospects and listen and watch your calls again. Always review those important calls and make sure you did the right thing, or make sure that you can improve upon it. Focus on the process, which is what is the next best action on each deal, not your quota. Just focus on that minutia and it will add up. And finally, remember, you're not your quota. If you have a bad quarter, you're not a bad salesperson. Your actions over time is what matters. And in the long term run, you'll win if you focus on that. And that's it.
Misha,
thanks for listening.
Thank you very much for kicking that off. Some real valuable insights on that maturity in managing your sales career. So next up, I'm going to invite Victoria. So Victoria, let's get you on before I introduce you.
Hi.
You're in there, Victoria. Okay, cool. So if you want to get your slides ready, I'll just give you an introduction. So Victoria is a senior sales manager over at SimilarWeb, originally from Cannes, France. Now, her background is she's traveled a significant amount over the last few years with work, having worked in New York, Paris, Mexico, Bangkok, and Dublin before settling in London. So she actually joined SimilarWeb as an SDR, and she's gone through each stage of that career to now becoming a senior sales manager. There's a lot of insights and data intelligence that SimilarWeb makes available to salespeople, and she's going to be talking about prospecting versus online dating. Victoria, the next 7-8 minutes is over to you.
So what I'm going to be talking about today is two things. One is online dating versus prospecting and why the two are actually very similar. And the second thing I'm going to be talking about is really how to use digital metrics to identify new opportunities and close more business. So first thing I wanted to talk about was the pre-outbound phase, right? So as my mother always says, you know, are you ready for a relationship? Do you know what you're looking for? If you don't, you need to figure it out. So what is important to me, for example, is digital metrics. And I believe it should be important to you. For example, if you're a B2B software company, you can look at metrics like, traffic or engagement metrics. Or if you're an ad tech, you might want to look at, for example, how much traffic a company is getting coming from display advertising, right? So I like to look at digital metrics more than, for example, number of employees, for example, when it comes to prospecting and when I'm prioritizing. The second thing I look at is growth. So obviously, we're seeing more and more companies now that are actually don't have a large amount of employees that are growing very fast. We can take as an example, for example, Gymshark. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. They have over, they have less than 100 employees, and they already are the #1 retailer of sports clothes in the world. So definitely would recommend to you guys to really look at growth opportunities in the companies you're prospecting. The next thing I also like to focus on is really kind of making sure I know what I'm going to say when I'm reaching out to a prospect. So if you're on Tinder and you're trying to find the one, you don't want to send the same message to everyone. You want to make sure you're personalized. So one of the metrics you could look at is, for example, bounce rates, right? A lot of you guys are, again, B2B software companies. What you want to be able to do is to identify a pain point. So for example, look at a website's bounce rate, and you might say, okay, I know their bounce rate's gone up since last month. I'm going to reach out to them to basically say that I can help with my solution, right? Second advice I wanted to give you is really to look for them at the right place. So where do you find the one? One of the places where I found the one are a lot of prospects which turn into clients in the last 2-3 years is first of all LinkedIn. So the screenshot you have on the right is basically one of the posts that we did. So I posted something on LinkedIn, which was basically insights talking about Gymshark and their competitors. And instead of just like emailing him or sending him a message on LinkedIn, I basically just tagged him in there and asked him, what are your thoughts on this data? So I found that doing it publicly is actually very powerful, and I got a very high response. I always get a very high response rate from prospects when I'm sending a message publicly and tagging them on it, even more than with emails, for example. Second place I wanted to talk about as well is events. So one of the lessons I've learned when I joined SimilarWeb was that going to an event is great, but to make an event successful, you have to prepare a lot in advance. Make sure that when you show up at the event, you have a lot of pre-booked meetings. Otherwise, I think it's not worth going. And also post the event, you have to make sure that you're sending out the post, event emails the night after the event. We saw a very big difference, right, before we did that and then after we did that at SimilarWeb. Third advice is really know when to reach out, because timing is obviously everything. So one of the things that you can do is you can obviously set up Google Alerts, or you can use other tools that are giving you digital insights as well. So for example, Teespring's an e-commerce site. Before I reach out as a sales rep, I want to make sure I have something interesting to tell them and that I'm going to be talking to them about something that is already on their mind at the moment. So for example, I see they've increased traffic in Brazil since last month, or India. That's a great reason for me to reach out and say, hey, you started getting traffic from that region. Let me help you guys with, whatever your solution does, right? Engagement metrics, conversion, personalization, etc. Also, timing is everything, and I learned a lot of lessons thanks to COVID, actually. So what I was doing during COVID is that I was trying to identify companies that were actually benefiting from it, if we can call it this way. So basically had a huge increase of traffic, for example. So Qwit is a B2B software company, and I saw that they've increased their traffic by 838%. So I thought, okay, this is a great lead for me to reach out. What they do is basically virtual queues, right? So their clients are e-commerce, etc. E-commerce sites that are getting a lot of traffic right to their website. So I reached out again on LinkedIn, got a great answer from them, and so that's great. And also you can look at industries. So for example, of course, during COVID, e-commerce sites are going to be looking for more and more chatbots. So obviously went after all the chatbots I can think of, and again, got great responses from them. I knew that they had money to spend, so it was the right time to reach out. Fourth advice is stand out from the crowd. So how do you convince the one that you are the one? And one of the things that was super that we were really successful with at SimilarWeb is actually events that we organize ourselves. So give you an example, we launched the French market around 2 years ago. We didn't have many clients there. We identified that the best city for retailers, right, the biggest retailers in France were located in Lille. So we invited all the C-levels we found that were located in Lille to a very informal dinner just to talk about challenges and share best practice. They came. It cost us less than £2,000, and the people that you see on this picture, there is a third of them who have converted to a paying customer at SimilarWeb. So definitely use these tiny events, and also presence. So we had an op that we had open for a while. The client was ready to sign. They just went silent. We didn't know what to do. So we sent them a lot of clever insights and data, and we really tried everything. Wasn't working. We ended up sending them cupcakes, and they really enjoyed it. So definitely that sometimes these little presents can help. And then last advice I'll give you is really know when to move on. So one of my top performing, campaigns are actually my breakup emails. So this actually Loft. That's where I got the stat. And so I would definitely advise you guys to, first of all, give up when it's the right time, but not really, because you want to send them a breakup email. So say, it seems like it's not the right time for you guys. I'm going to close the offer for now. Feel free to come back in the future if you're interested. Not only they will come back, but they will also come back apologizing, which will put you in a power position. That's it. Thank you, guys.
So the first phase is, of course, the first touch, the first approach, the qualification step. And here your manager obviously cannot involve in all deals, and you don't want it either. So go through your pipeline and try to identify a handful of VIP deals that are instrumental in reaching your target by the end of Q4. Once you have this shortlist, speak very, very early and in full transparency with your manager about what's your closing strategy for the deal. Try to, for example, leverage their network, look for connections on LinkedIn. That's the most basic, of course, but try to also leverage their experience. If you know that your manager, your sales leaders have previous experience in a specific industry, in a specific vertical, it's maybe time to engage on what's the best way to push the value driver, to talk about the pain points on that industry for that specific client. There is also a small bonus here for those of you who are selling to other sales teams. Ask your manager to constantly send a connection request to the sales manager on the other side. That's a win-win situation. A sales manager is always happy to connect with a peer, and on the other side, you get an extra bond on your deal that will maybe get sponsorship later on. So we've arrived maybe after the first phase, after the first qualification, into the more technical aspect of the deal, the product demo, the technical Q&A. We're all used to that, all but maybe not the newcomers. So I'm really talking here for those of you who recently joined a new company or were recently promoted to a new position, a new market segment, or a new territory. You might not be yet up to speed completely with the product knowledge and all you need to answer advanced complex questions. So here I would say it's completely fine to bring your managers. Exceptionally, when you feel like the discussion can be a little bit overwhelming, be transparent with the prospect is all I'm saying. Be transparent with the prospect so that they feel granted an extra specific attention from your management. The third part that I want to spend a bit more time on is actually the negotiation. Probably a lot of you are already involving your manager during the negotiation process in a sort of a role play. So let's say here we are like end of November, mid of December, it's the money time. The manager here should be, I think, used as a sparring partner. Again, for this handful of VIP deals, to actually challenge your strategy, to train your strategy, to run some rehearsal calls. The manager is not here to answer all in advance on your behalf, but the manager is here to ask the right questions that the prospect might ask, to anticipate a few things that you might not have thought of. And I think there is a second part of the negotiation that is always fun to have with individual contributors. It's basically the role play of either saying yes or saying no. It's quite important when you have to say no in negotiation, for example, about the price, about the terms and conditions, about a specific discount. When you must say no to your prospect, it's important sometimes that you let your manager do that, not because you're not able of doing that, just because your manager will always find the right words to justify that it's at a higher level of authority, that the negative answer came. And of course, it will relieve you from the burden of being the one who say no, right? There is another scenario where I think bringing your manager in the discussion is also very important. It's when you actually say yes. So when you give up to something in terms of discount, in terms of pricing, in terms of terms and conditions again, or extra resources, don't only say yes. Use this occasion to show that you're actually fighting, that you are fighting with your management, with your leadership, with other departments in your company, like the finance team. No one likes the finance team, right? So you actually managed to get a discount, to get free hand to offer the perfect deal to your prospect. And putting your manager in the conversation will actually answer what I call the internal sponsorship, the fact that you are doing a discount and it's legitimate that you do it because you actually fight for it. So as a conclusion, just to summarize what I said, try to identify the key deals that will make you successful and make a big difference by the end of the year. And go as fast as possible, as early as possible to your manager to actually try to make what would be your strategy and do some rehearsal calls. Then leverage your manager as a sparring partner to really challenge yourself, and use your manager actively whenever you need on a role play, specifically during the negotiation, to have an extra impact. I think if you do that, if you attend this kind of panels like this, it really shows that you want to step up from the average, from the crowd. And I really think that managing properly the relationship with your management, with your leadership, into leveraging them for closing more deals is one of the key soft skills that will actually make you stand out from the rest. And I think we could also take this think about using the director level, maybe the management, the leadership, not only about the sales, but also on other departments in your company. And I think Alex White, after me, will talk more about that in details.
Thank you, Leo. Much appreciated.
Thank
we
you.
look forward to asking questions to you at the end. And sorry, we had a brief issue on the opening of that conversation. So next up, we're going to invite Shabri up. Leo, if you press the leave button, Shabri's the CEO and founder of a company called SalesWorks, which offers sales development programs for SDRs, AEs, account managers, and customer success teams. The wonderful thing about Shabri is she's helped create this community of salespeople and sales leaders in the UK, and has been an important strategic partner. She's got over 10 years experience. And while working at Finastra, she built a team from 2 to over 50 sales reps. So I wanted to get a perspective of someone that actually works with and trains sales teams day in, day out. And she's going to be talking about discovery questions and keeping momentum. Shabri, you're live. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, James. So as James mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about discovery questions and why this plays such an important role in the sales process, and what we can do a little bit better to improve the conversions and the conversations that we're having. So as I mentioned, discovery is the most critical part of the sales process. And the reason why is because it's where we collect the information that we're going to need further down the line as we make the sale. It's where we also plant the seed in our prospect's mind that we're the solution to their problem. And it's also where you set the tone for everything else that happens in your relationship with the prospect. So the question that I want to take the next 6 minutes or so to explore is, why do so many people get it wrong? So I'm going to talk a little bit about how salespeople get their discovery calls wrong. I'm going to talk a little bit about what people need to work on. And finally, I'm going to give you some examples of my favorite questions to ask next time you're doing discovery. So at SalesWorks, we've trained and coached hundreds of reps on discovery calls and more. So I went back through and I had a look at typically what are the top 5 discovery mistakes that we see. So number 1, it's combining discovery with demo. And we see this all the time, and typically it happens when reps are rushed for time and they're really keen to show off the product. And when we do this, we dilute the effects of your discovery and then later on the demo. The second thing is they either have a weak or no upfront agreement. There's no mutual understanding on time, on commitment or outcome, and it's just a recipe for disaster. Number 3 is reps allowing their prospects to put a hard stop on the call at the start. So prospects will often tell you they can't talk, even if they can. So a quick tip that I've learned is try asking people how are they for time instead, as opposed to asking if they have a hard stop. Number 4 is where reps give away control of the conversation. And this typically happens when they've uncovered the pain and they put the ball back in the prospect's court by asking them what they would like to do next. And I think the best example and equivalent of this is if you go and see the doctor and you've got a problem, it's like the doctor diagnosing you and telling you what's wrong. And then it would be like the doctor asking them what you as the patient would like to do next, which is completely outrageous. And lastly, number 5, it's where we don't drill deep enough into pain. So an example of this would be when you hear a pain nugget like it's time consuming and you're really happy with discovering that surface level pain and you don't go any further. So if you recognize any of those mistakes in your discovery technique, then I would love to know. Just drop it in the chat and see what mistakes that you're making. It would be interesting to share ideas on that. So discovery should be just that, discovery. And so what I wanted to talk about was how to ask high impact questions. It's quality over quantity to uncover those pain points in detail. You don't use it to demo your product. Your demo is what you show you learn during the discovery. So yes, you're going to be pushed for time. So when talking to C-levels, you only get the chance to ask a few questions before your success rates tend to drop. But if you use well-framed, open-ended questions, then a few questions is enough to uncover the needs. When you ask questions is also important as well. So top reps are going to spread questions out evenly, because if you front load your call with questions, it sounds like an interrogation and puts your prospect on the defensive from the start. So bearing all of this in mind, I think prep is so key here. So what I would recommend is constructing a framework for your discovery call. So plan it out and think about the problems that your prospect is likely to be dealing with and anticipate the objections they may bring up. And if you aren't ready for those objections, you're going to sound a little bit defensive when they inevitably come. So think about others with similar problems who you've helped. So sketch out how you'll get to the outcome you want. So for me right now, this might look something like, I'm going to be prepping my discovery call and I know that my prospect's going to be facing problems like long ramp times, remote onboarding, and struggling to bounce back. I know that budget is likely to be an objection given COVID. So I might decide that the learnings that I want from the call are to learn more about their team structure, their KPIs, and their sales process. And as an outcome, I'd like an introduction to the team manager. So once I've sketched all of that out, suddenly I feel a lot better prepared. And once I get on the call, my priority is to unearth pain. I want to bring areas of opportunity to the surface, which I'll do by asking questions. Next comes the part that most reps miss out, which is intensifying the pain. I want to uncover the depth of the pain as well as its consequences. I also want the prospect to understand the intensity of the problem, and it could and likely be stuff they've never said out loud before. And finally, I'm going to build a vision. I want to steer the conversation away from frustration and show that there is a solution. And typically I'll do this by using social proof and storytelling. When you tell a story, we all know this in sales, it allows the prospect to visualize the problem, making it more relatable. So before I go, the last point, I'm going to tell you about some of my favorite questions to ask. And if you use these, then drop it in the chat and let us know. So first up is, what happens if nothing changes? This is great for revealing how much of a priority the problem is that you solve in your prospect's mind. The ideal response is when they are able to describe an outcome that they don't want to happen. The reply that you'd ideally like to avoid is nothing, but even then, it's still valuable information. My next question that I love to ask is, if we fix that, what would that mean? This gets the prospect talking about the value of their solution in your own words. It helps them clarify the bright future that's ahead of them when they work with you. The next one is really simple and again, incredibly effective, which is tell me more about that. When your prospects start talking about their pain, don't just tick the box and move on. Get them to go into more detail. You'll gather more essential information that will help you further down the line. And finally, another one to assess how much of a priority your solution is on your prospect's to-do list is, what has stopped you from solving this previously? The problem is unlikely to be new, so this question helps you understand why they're talking to you now and where it is on their priority list. When you ask the right questions at the right time, your sales call becomes a conversation. It creates its own momentum, and you and your prospect get the outcome you want. Thank you.
We can tell that you do this day in, day out, very well structured and very useful. We'll come and invite you back at the end to find out some of the other speakers and the discovery questions they use. So thank you for that. So our final speaker, our final 7-minute speaker, is Alex White, who is an enterprise account executive at Go Cardless. So Alex, if you want to click the share button and get yourself ready on screen. He's going to be talking about selling with executives. So the interesting thing about Alex, he actually started his career building an early stage business with 2 friends before switching industries, where he discovered the world of software sales. Now, as you would have probably seen, Go Cardless was recently in the Tech 100, and they've been a huge success story in the UK tech city. And Alex is one of their top global performers, and he's been nominated to speak today about selling with executives. He's also someone that bases his success on connecting with the right mentors and coaches, and I think that's something that we've been really strong advocates for. So Alex, the screen's good. We can hear you. Good luck.
You can see my screen, so the paint job that I've done is going to be visible. Great. Hi everyone. It's a real shame this can't be done in person. I know there's quite a few familiar faces in the audience there. Instead, you'll have to settle for the inside of my North London flat, probably with my gaming headset somewhere in the background. Anyway, before we get into the content, again, I want to make it super clear that I am not in any way, shape or form an originator of ideas. It's quite the opposite, actually. Everything I know about sales has been taken from other people. And more specifically, everything that I'm going to talk to you about today was taken from a sales coach of mine called Jamal Reimer. Jamal's coaching has been incredibly pivotal to my development as a software salesperson. And everything that he's taught me has had a direct impact on my ability to close bigger deals. So I thought, given it's been so helpful for me, this is the perfect opportunity to share my learnings with everyone else. So moving on to the topic, selling with executives. Given the short amount of time, I really want to focus this conversation on 3 main areas. Firstly, by using the pull of your executives to engage higher up much earlier on in your outbounding. Second is around multi-threading, so bringing executives into your deal, enabling them to build their own relationships. And finally, it's about using executives to help you close your deal. So to kick off with outbounding, when we're faced with getting into bigger accounts, it's fair to say that we feel like we've got a bit of a mountain to climb. And I guess in many respects, this is actually true. We, like many other salespeople, are like mountaineers. We're climbing up the side of a mountain. We're speaking to those junior and mid-level stakeholders. All of this is an attempt to get access to that economic buyer, that decision maker. But what if you didn't take that approach, the same as everyone else? What if executives help you go right to the top? A good example of this is where, in one instance, I reached out to a C-level prospect with my COO on copy, offering to share insights on how to optimize expansion into Europe whilst minimizing customer churn. And of course, as my COO has scaled a business across 4 regions, he's several successful B2C tech exits under his belt. He's raised over $250 million. This immediately makes me more than just a salesperson. This shows that I not only understand their business and what they're doing, but it makes me a connector of successful people. So this outbound strategy means that your chances of that decision maker mobilizing resource to further explore your solution, it's exponentially higher. It's far higher than if you were to enter that conversation as a solo salesperson looking for a discovery call with a mid-level stakeholder. So now you have an open opportunity. They've agreed to explore your solution. Multi-threading your deal is about bringing other stakeholders into the conversation. But bringing in your SE into the fold, as is, I'm sure, standard procedure for many of you, and involving an executive produces quite different results. Quite recently for me, I had a deal where we ticked every single box from a product perspective, a brand perspective, and even price. But the fear of migration was so great that the whole deal was at risk. So when I brought in our Chief Customer Officer, Pat Phelan, who of course oversees our onboarding function, when I brought him in to meet the project team and then ultimately their CFO, the tone of the conversation completely changed. It was Pat's personal guarantee to oversee the migration that filled the customer with confidence. This meant that we'd not only mitigated the risk of losing the deal, but we were now engaged at a much more senior level. So we'd strengthened ties across the account. We were strategically aligned at company level. And importantly, we were engaged at a much more senior level. So this, of course, increases my visibility of the deal. And finally, once executives are involved in the deal, this no longer becomes just your deal. This becomes our deal. Your executive has a much bigger vested interest here. So this worked incredibly well for me in a deal earlier this year. As Hiroki, our CEO, was involved in the deal, it meant he had direct and unfettered access to the decision maker. So was able to provide me with super valuable intel. In this case, Hiroki told me that there were specific problems around our partner integration. So if they were to sign with GoCardless, it would be on the basis that we got this problem fixed, but also it would be next month. So what did this mean for me? Well, first of all, of course, I asked our SE to look into the problem of the partner integration. But second, this meant for reporting purposes, I could let my manager know that as soon as this partner problem had been fixed, I'd be moving the deal into commit and chase to close next month. So all this, of course, and most importantly, has increased my propensity to actually close the deal. So to summarize here, by going in at the top, armed with valuable insight delivered by a respected peer, I'm able to mobilize customer resources to explore the solution now. And once executives are involved in the deal, they can help you move the deal forward, they can help you identify and mitigate risks, and ultimately your executive can help you close the deal. I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to any questions you have afterwards.
Really well spoken. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for your efforts in preparing that. So I'm just going to invite all the speakers up now for a bit of a discussion. Leo, Misha, Victoria, Shabri, if you can arrive. And we can only hold up 5 at a time, so then we're going to invite Alex back to answer some questions. So can you start asking your questions in the comments, please? So if you can go to the stage comment section on the right, and then you can ask questions. Thank you, guys. I know it's slightly nerve-wracking having to deliver this from your own screen, but fantastic job, and thank you for all the energy and enthusiasm. So we've heard today about the challenges and the ups and downs of your sales career, thinking about what tools and approaches you can use for prospecting, and the importance of discovery, and the importance of leveraging your sales manager and your executive. So starting at the beginning of the process, I was just wondering, do any of you have any other tips or suggestions on questions that you use for discovery? So other questions that you typically find yourself using or you've heard is useful to you in the sales process. Who wants to kick that off?
I can do that. My favorite question for any discovery that I do is, how do you measure success? It's a very open question, and they always with great, useful answers.
Kind of a flip side to Shabri's one earlier is, what happens if this doesn't get fixed? I think is an easy way to ask the implication question without asking what's the implication of this, which sounds a little bit more staged.
I would add something here that's, to go in the same direction of Misha. I would say what happened for you, for the stakeholder that you're talking with personally, what happens for you in terms of anything besides the business metrics, right? It can be internal promotion, internal move. It can be a team getting ahead of another, a budget discussion. What happens for you personally if this project doesn't get to its end?
What about, thank you for sharing that. Naturally, as on the AE side versus account managers, everyone's used to the volume of prospecting that is required to create opportunities. And we had some good tips about leveraging personalized insights. COVID's obviously had an interesting impact, depending on the context, on many different businesses. And the question I want to ask is around, have you adapted differently to your prospecting approaches? Maybe those of you that lead teams, you've just adapted as an organization. Maybe you've applied more empathy. Actually, maybe you've just ramped up your prospecting and you've been using other certain tools. Is there any examples anybody's got to share around prospecting tips that you would like to share with the audience?
I think something I've been seeing a lot with, at least with customers, is it's just generally much harder than it was before. People are getting across the board less results and needing to do more of the same stuff, more volume to get the same results as before. I think also the phone is much harder because people aren't in the office. So getting the office line isn't an option as much anymore. So kind of moving more towards doing video prospecting, I think that's already been a very powerful thing. But I think even more so now, to differentiate when everyone's just sending emails, doing LinkedIn touches, and not using the phone as much anymore because they don't have the phone numbers.
That's fair.
I would say the other thing, I agree with Misha. The other thing I would add is it's just a lot harder to cut through the noise. And, we're on the receiving end of so many LinkedIn messages, emails, and everything like that. And I think there's 2 things that I'd call out. One is, I think this concept of social selling, I think some people think social selling is a personalized LinkedIn connection request and that's it. And actually social selling is much more beyond that. It's engaging with your prospects, it's commenting on relevant posts that they're uploading and things like that as well. So I think it's redefining what social selling is. And I think the second thing is just how are you cutting through the noise, whether it's LinkedIn voice notes. And I hear from SDRs who haven't tried them, that doesn't work. And you only know if it doesn't work if you've tried it. So I think LinkedIn voice notes, videos, actually the day I spoke at SaaS Growth, which was a couple of months ago now, someone who was trying to prospect to me sent me a lunch gift card that day to say, you're speaking at the event, here's, I know it's a hectic day, and I took a meeting, right? That's different and that stood out. So I think there's just about like thinking about what works for your prospects and what works for your personas, and how do you cut through the noise with that as well.
Thank you for sharing. So I'm gonna, for those of you still live, look, we're keen to keep the discussion going before we all move into the networking. And I know that's a lot easier. It's a lot more comfortable for most of us to be chatting one-to-one in the networking. You'll see that under the stage on the right. I want to talk about involving the executives. So I'm going to invite Alex up. Misha, can I ask you to jump off? Thank you very much for your contribution today. And Misha will be around for the networking. So Leo, we talked about your involvement as a sales manager, and Alex has talked about leveraging executives and multi-threading. So I would ask Leo, what's the best way that an AE or someone in your team can leverage you? When are you happy that they've leveraged you, and when are you a little bit frustrated?
Okay, yeah, I would say there are different criteria here. The first time I'm happy is, of course, where the deal in size is worth it, right? And I think this is also regarding what Alex mentioned. This is also the case for any enterprise size deals that you need to have internal sponsorship, and that you might leverage the help of anyone in your team from all the departments that can help you, not only the sales manager. But I think another part that is another criteria that is quite interesting is also when the negotiation might be a little bit different from the usual, when the prospect doesn't really come with specific expectations, and then it's just a yes/no game. But instead, when you have an actual strategy to build, when you have to really climb the mountain, like Alex mentioned, I think it's a good image. When you have complex and multi-threaded conversations, I think it's in this moment that the sales leader can really help by mobilizing all the resources and the attention of all their top executives across the company.
I think that's super useful. I think the ability to AEs and AMs to qualify the opportunity to then pull in the sales management at the right time is critically important in that process. Alex, we've got a question here from Nuno in regards to the criteria you use to select how you're leveraging the C-level team. Do you have a criteria on how you select who's you're going to pull in at what stage?
I mean, yeah, if I'm pulling in a $5,000 deal, I'm not asking Hiroki to join the club. I will get shot down straight away. No, you got to pick and choose, right? You have to pick strategic accounts that not only are they going to add specific relevant value, but also the company has that account is strategic for the company. So if you're trying to penetrate, let's say, the telcos, and if you're speaking to EE, BT, like they want to be a part of that conversation, because GoCardless strategically is making a shift from SMB mid-market into enterprise. So to use them with those conversations is the perfect time. I think you've got to pick, does it align with not only just you, but the company objectives?
You talked about improving, forecasting and deal success. GoCardless sales organizations got quite large now, globally. Is it something that you stand out in terms of your approach when you're in forecast meetings? That it's obvious that you're the guy that's got a list of opportunities.
Quite the opposite.
Oh, really?
That's why I seek out mentors and coaches, because my forecasting was so bad. So it's like, right, okay, I identified as any good salesperson has to be a good forecaster, but I wasn't. So, and this was called out specifically by my manager as your forecasting. This is 1.5, 2 years ago. So I made a really conscious effort to get better at forecasting, and I found that involving executives in the deal increased my accuracy of my deal. So basically, I had an issue. This was my solution in basically solving that.
Excellent, thank you. So just to wrap this up, guys, what I'd like you to do is just leave us with any parting thought that you might have or advice. It might be a summarizing tip. When you think about what you've developed in your talk, one major takeaway that you might have, or just a parting comment. It'd just be nice to wrap that up. And then just to all the audience, thank you for everybody for joining us. We're going to move to the networking now, where you can have one-to-one conversations and get to know the other people on the call. And look, let's just be frank. The opportunity to get to know new people in an industry has been wiped out for the time being, and you never know who you're going to connect with. And we've got a good reputation of bringing people together. So usually I used to thank everybody for putting this event together and all the staff for bringing out the pizza and the drinks. We don't have that, so I'm going to give a round of applause to the speakers. Speakers, is there just a final point that you would like to share? I'll start with Victoria. One parting thought before you set on your way.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, feel free to reach out if you want, and if you're looking for digital metrics, right? We have also free version, which is great. So feel free to use that. It will definitely help you guys close deals.
Leo?
Yeah, I would say really do not hesitate to ask technical operational help from your top executives. But I would add something that has really nothing to do with the presentation I did. We are still in a situation of uncertainty, and if there is one big advice for all AEs here, is to always privilege the time of closing. If you can have a signature like tomorrow, over the size of the deal, over the deal value, basically. And I think this is something that is quite good. That's going to be quite important to finish up the year as good as possible. And I know that some of you might be struggling this year to be on target. So that will be my last advice for all of you.
Yeah, get the ink on the paper. Shabri?
So I think my one tip would be, if you're a rep, then don't underestimate the importance of practicing all these things, whether it's discovery, whether it's objection handling. Like, all of these parts of the sales process require a different playbook. So if you're a rep, don't underestimate practicing. And if you're a leader, then don't underestimate the importance of walking your team through this and giving them hands-on support.
Thank you, Shabri. And then Alex, final parting point?
Yeah, I mentioned it in my talk, and I think because I stole his ideas and teachings directly, I think it's right that I give him a plug. I think he's closed $160 million worth of deals at Oracle, and he's now moved into sales coaching. So I would definitely recommend you guys connect with Jamal Reimer. He's been fantastic in coaching and teaching me insights and intel about sales. So yeah, highly recommend him.
Thank you. So thank you to all speakers. If you guys want to just drop your link in the comments to your LinkedIn so that people can connect with you, and obviously your companies if they're relevant to the audience. And then I just want to wish everybody the best of luck. If you are actively searching for your role right now, we have a event next week with a company called Jai Search in regards to specifically the process of looking for a role, preparing your CV, account management, that process of job search. Now, many of you hopefully are in a good position right now where you've got a solid role, but I know more than ever, because I'm getting daily messages about this, that people are actively looking. So send the link I'll drop in the comments to a partner. So guys, this is a wrap. If you want to join the networking, that would be much appreciated. And we can all have a chat. But thank you very much for participating. This wouldn't be possible without you all. Thank you also to our sponsors, SalesLoft, who's the #1 engagement platform, Aircool, the #1 phone system, Venatrix, the #1 for talent. We've had Shabri here today from SalesWorks. So if you're looking, or your sales leaders reaching out about development, feel free to reach out to Shabri at SalesWorks and connect with her and her team. SimilarWeb have got a sales intelligence tool that Victoria has talked about. And then we've also got to thank Refract, Exactly, Clary, Air Marketing, and also Cognizant. So thank you very much. And I'm going to head to the networking, guys. So have a good one.